Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Coop Radio presents talking about NASCAR. Um, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather this week, unfortunately. This is probably going to be a bit shorter of a show. It is more so just that I live in Minnesota and the weather has seemingly changed here. And with that weird weather change, I don't know if it has to do with the weather change or not or what, but it went from like 30 some degrees one day and then it jumped to like 70 out of nowhere. Like a solid 75, 77 in like a day. And so I don't know, and it happened right around that time. Like it happened like I really started to like get a bad sore throat and I've been coughing all day today. It has not been great. Um and so because of that, I'm going to try to keep it a shorter show and a bit more concise thoughts. So apologize for the shorter show this week. You're not used to you're not going to get your 2 hour and some change show talking about NASCAR stuff, but maybe with the more concise, shorter podcast this week, you guys will be more inclined to listen. I saw last week's episode, bit small on the view count, but even the few that tuned in, I appreciate you. I hope more of you guys tune in this week. A bit more controversial stuff happened. So let's not wait around. Let's dive into this really quick. The biggest news out of last week, I'm going to skate over a couple things because they really don't need too much conversation about it. Number one being the fallout from the Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez stuff. There's a little bit more talk on Daniel Suarez's side of things. I said my piece on Suarez last week. If you want to go back and listen to last week's episode, please feel free to go back and listen to it because I had a nice long rant about Daniel Suarez and the way his career has gone and my personal feelings on the guy and that whole situation. So the only real extra comments that I didn't really comment on was, him basically saying the only reason they didn't fight him was because of the fact that if he fought him, he would have been fined $50,000 and he didn't see the point in it. Which to me, that's kind of a cop-out answer as far as why you wouldn't pursue whatever issue you had with him or why you didn't try to throw hands. You're getting paid millions of dollars, 50 grand if you're that upset about something and you feel like you're justified in your anger, I think might be worth it. So I don't know. To me, trying not to cough here. To me, it was more of a cop-out answer. But like I said, go back and listen to last week's episode if you want to hear my full thoughts on Daniel Suarez there and Ross Chastain's incident last week at Vegas. Hang on, let me take a drink. The only other thing that really came out after I released the podcast last week was I talked about in last week's podcast how I thought that Alex Bowman would be back this week. And then it was announced, I think the next day or later that day on Tuesday after the podcast came out that Alex will actually be out 3 more weeks at least. So he's going to miss Darlington, obviously, and then he'll miss the next 2 weeks. So it'll be Martinsville, and I think they have Easter off here in a couple weeks as well. So that's kind of disappointing that Alex is out, but it gives Allgaier more of an opportunity to see what he can do in that 48 car and to see what kind of disparity as far as where they're usually running when Alex is in the car versus somebody else. So far, Justin has not done the greatest as far as speed-wise. There were times where he was top 20 in that 48 car last week at Darlington, but the finishing result was just kind of okay. I'm looking at it was 24th. I mean, just okay. Nothing too spectacular. Running around Austin Dillon and Noah Gragson. So I mean, not in the greatest camp as far as speed. It seemed like every time you looked at Austin Dillon, they kept showing him either he would gain spots, I think, on like pit road or pit strategy or something, and he'd lose all those spots and drop back to the mid-20s throughout the run. So not the greatest camp to be associated with as far as speed. But we'll see how the next couple weeks go. Obviously, like I said, I mean, it should only really be one more race that Alex will miss. But I'm not going to talk too much about Alex. I've already talked about him how many weeks in a row now. Let's talk about this biggest story from last week that I'm way too late on now, because of course it happened, like, again, the day after I released the podcast. Do I need to wait an extra day to do these podcasts, and I need to record them on a Tuesday and then release them on a Wednesday so I don't miss all this news? Because I got all this stuff that happened last week that I just totally didn't get a chance to talk about because it happened after I recorded the podcast. But the Daniel Dye stuff, look, I'm really late on this. Everyone and their mother has had their opinion on it. Everybody has came out and either been very polarized in one way or the other. They are either very with him or very against him. Everybody is either very with Daniel in the sense that why are we suspending a guy for free speech related things? And then other people are saying, that was a really terrible, horrible thing that he did, and he deserves to be indefinitely suspended or kicked out of the sport or whatever. I think, in my personal opinion, as far as the heavily against Daniel Dye, there are two types of people that are in that camp. One is you're very against him because you already had preconceived notion about him that you didn't like him because of the fact that he's getting opportunities because of who he's related to. You don't think he's good enough to be in the equipment that he's in. And maybe he's said and done things in the past that you're not a fan of. You're either in that camp or you're in the camp of the super woke side of things, whereas you don't care about what he previously did or who he was as a person or who he's related to family-wise. You're just so incredibly offended over the fact that he imitated a gay voice, making fun of some other IndyCar driver by the name of David Malukas. You're falling in one of those two camps, I believe. If you're in the camp that you're with him, it's because a lot of people, it's kind of the same thing where it's you're in two categories if you're with him. You're with him because of, Mr. America, free speech, blah, blah, blah. Or you're with him because you found it funny. And you like the guy and you think what he said was funny and shouldn't be punished. Took a drink there. I am split. So I don't have a problem with Daniel Dye personally. My very brief interaction actually with Daniel, there was a small moment where this was back years and years ago when the whole Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman thing happened at Martinsville, when Denny called Alex a hack, and then Alex made all those t-shirts. I bought one of those t-shirts, and then at my local short track, Elko Speedway, they have an ARCA race there once a year, and I've made it a habit to go to that ARCA race every year because it's the only real major NASCAR race that we have that's near me. And so I went to the Elko race, and, as I assume most other local short tracks have, right before the main event, you can go out into the front stretch and take pictures and try to get autographs from the drivers at their cars. Free of charge, by the way. There's no charge for that. You can just walk down there and go talk to them or say hi or try to get a picture or whatever. As I was walking down the front stretch, heading back to my seat, Daniel at this point is in the ARCA series. And at this point, he's got the giant afro. He doesn't have the short haircut like he has now. He had that giant afro back then. I'm walking by some of the cars heading back, and then all of a sudden I hear somebody go, "Hey!" And I turn, and it's Daniel Dye looking right at me, and he goes, "I have that same shirt." I'm like, "Hey, that's cool, man. Thanks." And I didn't know if it was like, you want me to come talk to you? You want me to come take a picture with you? He just made a nice comment about my shirt. So small stuff like that, I guess, can kind of make you like somebody as a person. There's no real interaction. There's no real conversation with the guy. But a nice small interaction like that made me go, oh, okay, Daniel's kind of cool. Because nobody else, any other driver that was there, acknowledged my shirt. Haley Deegan was there. And of course, her line was 90% of the people that came down to go see them. Her and, or maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was her and Ty Gibbs. Because I know Ty Gibbs was in the field. He qualified on pole, and again, his line was crazy long. Again, because he's the one guy that everybody looks at and is like, oh, he's Joe Gibbs' grandson. He's going to be in the Cup Series. Maybe I should go get his autograph while he's young. And it's free. So Daniel didn't have a lot of people in his line, and so that's probably why he acknowledged me. But long story short, I never really had an issue with Daniel Dye as a driver, as a person. Nothing that, as far as I've seen him do on track, has been that egregious. He hasn't had those Ty Gibbs, speaking of Ty Gibbs, he hasn't had those Ty Gibbs incidents of wrecking teammates or wrecking people constantly. He has been like Austin Hill, where he has this big reputation about him being a crybaby or nothing like that. And then he goes on some whatnot stream. And I got the clip here. We're going to play both clips because there's the one main clip that was going around to everybody, and then there was the other one that's actually extended. So we're going to play both here. This is the shorter clip. This is the one that was going around to everybody, and that everybody was talking about.
I didn't know what he raced or anything. We did some like St. Pete promo stuff, and he was at it. And I thought he was one of like the Indy Next guys or like a Miata guy or something. I really didn't know.
Sorry, Emma. He plays for the other team, I think.
And I was like, so what do you, I was like, do y'all race any ovals? And he was like, distraught that I asked him that question. Like, yeah, we raced Nashville and Iowa. I'm like, okay. I didn't know Miatas went to Nashville. And he's like, why don't you eat your food? It's like, oh my gosh, yes. We race Indianapolis too. I love Indianapolis. And Roger Penske. I love Roger. Love you, Roger. As soon as I start doing a David Malukas gay voice, I hit a gold. So let's keep it going. We're just gonna keep talking like this till I miss a gold. I'm on fire.
So that, okay, I'm sorry. It's funny. You can't not laugh. It's pretty funny. So that was the clip that was going around. By the way, something that no one is talking about, all those woke people that are, wanting to crucify Daniel for doing that. What nobody's talking about is it's not even Daniel Dye's stream. He's on Brent Cruz's stream. And Brent is just sitting there listening to him and laughing along with him. But yet no one is talking about Brent Cruz. All of the, obviously all of it is on Daniel. This is the other extended part that seemingly I didn't see until I actually was trying to look for clips. This is Daniel Dye's continued impersonation of David Malukas here.
Checking for the David Malukas grinder account. Have a break, David Malukas. David Malukas. Yes, Queen. I would love to sleeve it. Always gotta sleeve it. Love to sleeve it. Gotta sleeve it.
Would you rather sleeve it or get sleeved?
If I'm David Malukas, I'd rather get sleeved. Oh my gosh, Roger. Roger. Stop it, Roger.
Who's Gabe owner?
David Malukas. Andreas, Frankie, Carson, Junebug, Tyler Hankrum, Brian Jigan, Mark Martin, Kevin Happy Harvick, yes, he drove for Roger. Oh, Kurt Busch, he drove for Roger. Who did he drive from? I don't know. Probably the crime scene.
Okay. There's probably more, but I haven't found that. Look, I am torn on this for a multitude of reasons. One, It's funny. Get a life. You don't think that stuff's funny? Like, grow up. Who cares? He's making fun of somebody, whether that guy's deserved it or not. At the end of the day, he's trying to be funny on a live stream. There are plenty of people out there that have done and said way worse than him and been punished far less. That's number one. Number two, the only argument that I would have as far as like why this isn't a good thing, is it my only thing to Daniel as far as a criticism is like, dude, you know what you're getting yourself into. You're not an ARCA driver anymore. You're an O'Reilly Series driver. You are still somewhat of a mid-level name within the sport. People are going to put you under a microscope whenever you are in any of the major 3 or even the major 4 series. If you're a name of any kind within NASCAR, you are under such a microscope of this woke culture that the sport has now cultivated itself under, that if you tried to be any sort of funny or edgy or anything like that publicly, you're toast. Like, you're done. The mob is going to swallow you whole the minute you tried to do anything edgy or anything remotely controversial to get a laugh. This sport is so woke that guys who previously made not even comments on social media. There was the incident of Noah Gragson who liked a certain meme on like Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and he got punished for it. I don't remember if it was a fine or a suspension, but it was one of the two. It may have been both. He may have been fined and suspended. I'm going to Google this right now. Noah Gragson meme. Yeah, he got suspended for liking a meme that was mocking George Floyd back in 2023. And they did it under the guise of the the member misconduct section of the 2023 NASCAR rulebook. This is the crop of people that you are associated with that will get so upset and so offended over you liking a post that can be construed as somewhat controversial against a certain narrative, a certain side of the political spectrum. Because of the deep ties within the other side of the political spectrum for its 75 some years of existence, and because it has the sport itself has dug itself into such a hole as far as popularity, as far as money-wise, as far as attendance, as far as everything, from top to bottom, it has now tried to pivot away from its previously established political side to the complete opposite side to try to accept more fans. And because the sport is doing that, you are now accepting the extremely woke side of things. Where you previously had the extreme right side, or not extreme right side, but the right side of the political spectrum. Now you are leaning to the left side of the political spectrum as a sport. And the left side is much more scrutiny, has much more scrutiny against free speech as far as things that you say that can be construed as offensive. Doing a gay voice of an IndyCar driver is immediately going to open the floodgates for anybody who, even if they are not NASCAR fans at all, don't even know anything about the sport, barely even pay attention, they just see that and they go, of course, NASCAR driver's a sexist or a racist or whatever, even though Daniel Dye probably isn't. And that's all it does, is it opens the floodgates to allow that criticism in that the sport as a whole is so sensitive to, that they will overreact so much to any sort of incident. There are certain instances where it's like, okay, the reaction is necessary, or the reaction I think is warranted. The Kyle Larson thing from however many years ago, when he said his certain word on a live stream, suspending him for a year, you would construe that as warranted, especially for the time. The Noah Gragson thing, though, to follow that, was not warranted, in my opinion. Suspending him for any bit of time because he liked something on Instagram, to me, is ridiculous. So that's where I can have my own personal opinions as far as, do I think Daniel Dye should have been indefinitely suspended for making fun of another driver? You want to be honest? No. Who cares? At the end of the day, Daniel is a mid-level driver in the O'Reilly series who will probably never see Cup time for many years, whether because of lack of funding or lack of talent, whatever the reason is. He'll probably be either an O'Reilly series driver or a truck series driver or whatever for the rest of his career. And at the end of the day, words really mean nothing. He's making fun of somebody to try to, again, get a laugh out of a live stream. You should see some of the shit that people do on live streams, and then it's funny, but there's no punishment for them. There's no real backlash against them. And here's the other funny thing too, is if Daniel wasn't suspended for that, I'm not even sure anybody would have known. I mean, besides the, maybe 100 some people that were watching Brent Cruz's Whatnot stream. I mean, how many people are really watching a Brent Cruz live stream? Some random 17-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid, however old he is, who's just getting into the O'Reilly series himself, who wasn't even old enough to drive his 19 car last week at Vegas. Like 100 some people at most are watching that live stream. There's not a lot of people that are flocking to the Brent Cruz live stream on Whatnot. If it was never addressed, you just let it go. And no one would have known, no one would have cared. It wouldn't have blown up into this big thing where it became a giant talking point and X between everybody within the NASCAR community, where again, you're either on one side completely or the other side completely. It is unnecessary to suspend somebody for making jokes. And these jokes, again, I find them offensive. Well, that's a you problem, bro. That's a you problem, buddy. Like, at some point, get over yourself. Get over yourself completely. And this is what is so disappointing about this sport that I love so much, is that I'm inundated with people that are just, they have nothing else in their lives but the want and need to be offended by everything. They can never laugh at themselves. They can never laugh at anybody else or anything else. Everything has to get to them and has to affect them in such a deep way. And it upsets me to a degree where it's like, God, it almost makes me not want to watch. It makes me not want to participate in watching the sport. Because this is the type of people that are influencing the sport and the future of the sport. These types of fans are the ones that NASCAR is listening to, the ones that are so offended by the smallest things. And you wonder why now guys who may be aggressive on track and get into incidents or cause cautions unintentionally or be aggressive as a whole and make contact with people intentionally to try to move them out of the way, it is met with such a visceral reaction of hatred by fans. And then therefore the drivers as a whole as well are allowed then and are justified in their own beliefs of saying, screw this guy for being too aggressive. He needs to back off, blah, 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 blah. He's fucking up my race. He's screwing me up. This is where all the hate of Carson Hocevar comes from. There's nothing offensive about Carson Hocevar. But God forbid he roughs up your favorite driver too much. You have such a visceral reaction on Instagram or on Twitter. You blow up in such a pathetic degree, makes you look like you have a mental illness of your own. And these are the people that I have to associate with, and these are the people that the sport listens to. I understand it. At the end of the day, fans are going to be fanatics. They're going to be fans. They're going to overreact to things. They're going to freak out, blah, 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 whatever. At the end of the day, though, this is like nothing in the grand scheme of things. You made fun of the guy's voice. Who cares? Who cares? Nobody else in that room cared. Nobody else stood there and went, you need to stop that right now, because they're making jokes. If you really believe, let's put this in perspective. For every fan out there, any woke fan out there who's overreacting to this, I want you to know and understand. Any driver out there who's a part of this sport, if you truly believe that they are this woke-minded, extremely liberal-minded person like you are, who is as offended as you are to what Daniel said or what Noah Gragson liked or anything, if you think that anybody within that field, that includes Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, obviously, Chase Elliott, Christopher Bell, Austin Cindric, Denny Hamlin, Chase Briscoe, William Byron, everybody from top to bottom, if you think that any of these people were offended by what Daniel Dye said there, you've lost the plot. You've lost the plot. I guarantee you, all those guys, if they were in that room, they would have laughed too. And don't worry, they'll tell you publicly, if Denny was asked about it, I don't know, I didn't listen to his podcast to see if he talked about it. But if he was asked about it, of course Denny is going to publicly say, you can't be doing that. That's too far. That's out of that's whatever he would say. That's distasteful. That's the word I was looking for. That's real distasteful of him to do to him. That's really distasteful of Daniel to do, and he needs to be smarter. I guarantee you, Denny, when he saw that, he laughed himself. He thought it was funny. But no, don't worry. All your guys publicly will tell you, oh, that's so offensive. We can't deal with that. They're the same guys who all went along with pushing Bubba Wallace down pit road after the little noose incident there. I guarantee you, every single one of those people on pit road, maybe even Bubba, I don't know, but maybe even Bubba, I guarantee you though, everybody else, when they were doing that, thought, this is cheesy. This is cheesy. What are we doing here? This helps no one. This doesn't even help Bubba. This is just stupid. But oh boy, we all sat there and cried. Get over yourselves. Seriously, get a fucking life. Speaking of Denny, though, I wanted to talk about this because we're going to dive into our asshats of the week here real quick before I go too far. And before I have a coughing fit here, I'm about to cough like crazy. Dale Jr. had a comment last week after last week's race at Vegas that I want to replay. And this goes into our asshat of the week. And, I never thought I'd have to do this. I never thought that I would have to do this, but I'm going to run through my top 3 asshats of the week. Number 3, I have to put Daniel Dye on that list. Even though I thought it was funny. Remember where you're at. Remember what your job is. Remember, you're in the Cup Series, dude. Or not the Cup Series. You're in NASCAR. You're in one of the 3 major series. You're getting paid a good amount of money to do it, but you're also in a environment of extremely woke people. Kind of like a read the room kind of thing. So Daniel Dye is number 3. Number 2 is Denny Hamlin. And I'll get to why he's number 2. He's our number 2 asshat of the week after Dale Jr.'s comments here. But the number 1 asshat of the week, God, I feel like I'm committing a cardinal sin by doing this, is Dale Jr. Dale Jr., I think for the first time and hopefully the only time, I have to put him as our number 1 asshat of the week because he had this to say about Denny Hamlin after last week's race at Vegas.
Denny Hamlin is my pick for the championship this year.
What do you make of his ability to win as he gets older?
So Denny gets out of his car, and I've heard him say this before. He gets out of the car and he says, I'm not as good as all those guys. I got to work harder. I don't believe he's correct. I believe he's working hard. I do believe he's as good as some of them guys. I think that he's better than quite possibly a Cale Yarborough.
Stop right there. He's better than Cale Yarborough? You think he's better than Cale Yarborough? 3-time Cup Series champion, 83 wins. You think he's better than Cale Yarborough? Okay, let's let him finish his quote before I dive in.
Some of those big names that he's looked up to, right? Couple more years, you might put him on the Mount Rushmore.
Stop right there. A couple more years, you're going to put him on the Mount Rushmore. By the way, that means that you would put Denny Hamlin as a top 4 driver of all time in NASCAR. Dale Jr. thinks that we at one point could put Denny Hamlin as our top 4 driver of all time in NASCAR. Finish your speech here, Dale.
I do believe, talent-wise, he ranks way higher than he wants to admit. There are anomalies in our history of drivers who didn't fall off. A lot of guys tend to fall off around the same time frame in those early 40s, mid-40s. They're toast. And he's not doing that. He's an anomaly. Denny Hamlin.
He's an anomaly. You know what, Dale? You're an anomaly. I'm going to try not to be too mean, because God knows everybody looks at Dale Jr. as God here in NASCAR, and I look up to him. He's right a lot of the times. A lot of the stuff that he says, his opinions on the sport, direction he thinks the sport should go, I agree with a lot of what he says, but let's get one thing straight. Denny Hamlin is not a top 4 driver of all time, and he never will be. He's barely top 10. And the only reason that he is top 10 is because of the simple fact that he has just hung around long enough. That's it. I said this, I alluded to this a little bit last week, I want to say, 2 weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, when I talked about Carson Hocevar and the whole everybody else, how Denny Hamlin sits there and, wants to give him the talk as far as how to conduct himself going forward on track with other drivers and blah, 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 blah. And I kind of took a shot at Denny. If you go back and listen to that podcast, I took a shot at him where I basically said, hey, you want to go ahead and listen to the advice from the guys who have now convinced you that he's one of the best all time because he's just stuck around long enough. We need to get away from this idea also, by the way, that just because you continuously race in one of the top end equipment, by the way, into your 40s that all of a sudden that just means that you're raised up the level, you're raised up the list so much higher out of nowhere just because of the fact that you just race for a longer period of time than others. Jimmy Johnson's gone, Kevin Harvick's gone, Junior's gone, Gordon's gone, all these guys have gone. All these top end talent were gone. And then all of a sudden, Denny takes the next step, and all of a sudden, he's winning a lot more races. All of a sudden, he's considered the best in the field. Maybe it's because everybody else just left. You notice that, though? In 2011, 2012, people thought, oh, Denny's okay. You know, Denny's all right. But if you were to ask yourself the legitimate question of, you know, do you think Denny's, you know, one of the top 10 best guys in the field around that time frame, you'd say no. You wouldn't even 2010, 2011, he wasn't a top 10 driver then. He was maybe a fringe top 10 because of, again, the equipment he was in. But if you were to ask yourself the legitimate question of who do you think is actually the best in the field, rank the drivers in order, he's barely cracking the top 10. Let's go back and look at this because I want to look at this. We'll say 2011. 2011 NASCAR Cup Series stats. I'm going to pull up God, if Racing Reference will ever load. I'm going to pull up, here is 2011 point standings, the year that Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards won the they tied for the championship, and ultimately, obviously, Stewart won. So here's a list of guys. By the way, in the point standings that year, Denny was 9th. So in order, I am right now I think Tony Stewart's way better than him. I think Carl Edwards is better. I think Matt Kenseth is better. I think Kevin Harvick is honestly better. Kevin Harvick he's won a championship. Sure, he may have not now won as many races, but Harvick was better in certain years than Denny was by a mile. Not to mention, like I said, he's got the championship. I'd say Jimmy Johnson's better than him. I'd say Jeff Gordon is obviously better than him. I'd say Kyle Busch is still better than him. I'd say Kurt Busch, he has a championship. May have not won as many races, but Kurt's issue was personal issues. His issues was flying off the handle, being a crazy person, and having anger issues and screaming on the radio and getting himself fired that way. Going down the list, people might not like it, but Joey Logano has multiple championships. Denny Hamlin doesn't even have one. Truex, if he had figured it out earlier, probably could have been better than Denny, but he didn't have he was stuck in DEI when it was dying. Then he went to, MWR, where it was obvious he was the second or third car there. There's 9. If I don't even count Truex, there's 9. So he's barely cracking the top 10 at this point. In 2010. Or 2011. And I'm not even mentioning guys like Casey Kane, Greg Biffle, Jeff Burton, Mark Martin. I'm not saying today. I'm saying in 2011. All these guys you'd have ahead of Denny Hamlin. So he's barely cracking the top 10 as far as top drivers in the sport, right? Now, all those previous names are gone. Stewart, gone. Edwards, gone. Harvick, gone. Kenseth, gone. Johnson, gone. Dale Jr., gone. Gordon, gone. Kurt Busch, gone. Truex, gone. Jeff Burton, gone. Mark Martin, gone. Newman, gone. Kyle Busch is still around, but he's in a dead organization. And I guarantee you, if Kyle was in the same JGR equipment that he was in for all those years, he'd be right there with him. Not to mention, Kyle was asked about, Denny passing him probably here in the all-time wins list. And I didn't really hear what Kyle had to say, but I just thought about it for a second. Like, how sad is that? A guy who should probably be ahead of Denny Hamlin in the all-time wins list is probably going to be behind him at the end of his career just because of a bad business decision. Just because of the fact that the money wasn't there to keep him at JGR, and so he had to leave, and he was forced to go to a mid-level organization in RCR, and he was throwing all the weight on top of him to fix it. How sad is that? And now Kyle, in the annals of history, will probably be behind Denny in all-time wins because of this. And anybody in their right mind would take Kyle Busch over Denny Hamlin as far as, quote, all-time drivers. If there's anybody who's a current day guy who you'd say, replace the fourth guy on the Mount Rushmore with somebody. Everybody's going to put the 7 champions. But if you had to replace Jeff with somebody who's a current day guy, who you'd pick, anybody in their right mind would take Kyle over Denny every time. He has multiple championships. He has 200 some wins over all 3 of the series that he's competed in. Truck, Busch Series / O'Reilly Series now, and the Cup Series. Over 200 wins. And he has 63 wins himself, and he'd probably have close to 70 if he had the opportunity to stay at JGR. So this idea that, because Denny has just stuck around long enough and he's outlasted all these other people that he raced with before. All these other guys who were previously here, they just aren't here anymore. So, because Tony Stewart hasn't been around forever, he just doesn't count. Because Carl Edwards retired early, he just doesn't count. Kenseth no longer counts. Kyle Busch, because he got booted out of JGR because he was too expensive and they couldn't afford him. For whatever reason, he doesn't count anymore. All these other guys who Denny used to get his ass kicked by for years and years and years, they don't count anymore. It's a joke. It's a fucking joke. This idea that we have all the memory of goldfish and we just forget. We just forget. At the end of the day, no. Denny Hamlin is not ever going to be a top 4 driver all time. He'd have to be around for another how many years, and he'd have to have a few championships before I'd even consider it. But he doesn't have one single solitary championship. He can have all the wins in the fucking world. It doesn't matter. Well, he should have had a championship last year. Well, he doesn't. Yeah, he should have had a championship in 2010 too, but he didn't. All those Denny Hamlin apologists will sit there and say he should have had a championship how many different years in a row? Yeah, but he doesn't. And even if he did have a championship, I'd still have Richard Petty ahead of him. I'd still have Dale Earnhardt ahead of him. I'd still have Jimmy Johnson ahead of him. I'd still have Jeff Gordon ahead of him. I'd still have Bobby Allison ahead of him. David Pearson, Darrell Waltrip. I would have Cale Yarborough ahead of him. I'd have Kyle Busch ahead of him. There's how many people that no matter what Denny does at this point in his career, he's already set behind him because the gap is too large. And he can't make it up. And people wonder why. It's like, you just don't like Denny. That's why you just hate him. You just don't like him. Oh, is it because he's such a nice guy? Is it because he's so even keel? Well, here, I got something for you. Here's Denny, his own post. This is the weird shit that I don't like. I'm going to let you guys watch this. This is from Denny's own Instagram account from last week. And this is an exact example why I'm not a big fan of him and why I just have such an issue with him. Here, go ahead.
We had a competition. We talked about it last week. We are at the Masturbator Classic in Vegas. Riley Herbst's pond. 5 biggest fish. I had no idea it was going to get this close.
First cast.
Is that fast enough for you? 416.
4.9.
Big numbers.
Of these two guys racing to spots while they can all see
My
the fish in
pants
the
are
water.
falling off. In the hotel, we agreed, okay, our scales are the same because we weighed a banana. I was actually standing next to him. He catches a fish. It's 3.26. And it just didn't look like a 3.26. He grabs my scale. 3.00. Whoa. His always reads heavier.
Denny's total, 19.559. Charlie's total, 19.80 pounds. Can we also preface that my scale was weighing less than his scale?
My problem is we saw that disparity in one fish. Multiply that by 5.
Got a scoring discrepancy here.
I think he doesn't like the outcome.
I mean, they do work for him. He's badgering them.
I beat your least favorite driver. You're welcome. Probably say this is short pond fishing, but he's a hack.
And then I have 24 hours of additional footage of these guys. Jordan's trying to get a fan.
I feel bad for the people who have to work for Denny. I feel so bad for these guys. Because they're not allowed to have their own opinions on things. They're only allowed to sit there and to just agree with Denny. That's why they're being paid to be there.
Family photo outside the sphere.
When you weigh before the race, you weigh after the race. Hide behind your fake win.
All right, let's get the family photo here.
And then videos of you guys at Catch eating a nice dinner, weighing your backpack.
We're at Catch right now, weighing backpacks.
What the fuck are we doing here? Like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? It's a stupid gay-ass fishing contest between your friend, and you're sitting there obsessing over fucking not winning. I get it. So, it's just because he's that much of a competitor. This is weird shit.
I'll do a poll, and the 2 choices is I need to do a concession speech or the results are just too muddy.
He's just a weird guy. That's weird. Anybody in their right mind would go, yeah, that's weird. That's a weird thing to just get all upset about and obsess over. This idea that like you're so upset by a fishing tournament. A stupid fishing tournament with basically a plastic participation trophy between your friend, I assume, and you let it affect you so much that it bothered you for what, a whole week or the rest of the day, where you were bitching about it to your lackeys after it happened, and then you were bitching to them while you're out there trying to have fun with your family, and you're still bitching to them about it, and then you're obsessing over it so much that you're weighing your backpack at dinner. If I was, like, how do you be friends with a guy like that? This is weird. Like, let it go. It doesn't matter. That's just signs of like somebody who's so insecure, somebody who can't take a loss with respect, can't handle anything not going his way. So if you want an example as to why I don't like Denny and why most of the NASCAR community doesn't like him, there you go. There's your example. All right. Let's get into this weekend recap stuff. Darlington. So we saw some throwbacks in the Cup Series, Trucks, and O'Reilly Series. It was not a branded throwback weekend, so we didn't see all of the guys doing throwbacks, but it was still nice to see people do throwback schemes. I liked a lot of the Dodge Ram truck throwbacks. I thought those were all really cool. I obviously liked the Carson Hocevar throwback to Dale Earnhardt. And I really hope someday we can come back to doing those traditionally again and not have these guys go, well, we ran through all the throwbacks already. When are we going to redo throwbacks, or we're going to throw back to myself soon, like Chase Elliott will say, that fucking weirdo? No, it's a tradition that it can't get stale. Okay, because you've already done this throwback, you can't do it again in 8 years, 9 years. You can redo throwbacks. Maybe not do them back to back years, but like you can do another throwback that's already been done. You don't have to run it one time and then never do it again. I hope that we get back to revering throwbacks again and wanting to do them more again. I really hope. With that said, though, as far as the weekend goes, the truck and O'Reilly Series races were okay. Looking back at the truck series lineup here, I will say, I'm going to cough here. Hold on. I got to mute. I'm petering out here. I got to get through this here quick. The truck series race I thought was pretty good. It was mostly obviously dominated by Caden Honeycutt, Ross Chastain, Corey Heim, kind of the names you really expect to be up front. Bell was up there at points. He kind of fell back at the midpoint of the race. But the one thing I will say is, you know, even with the nine cautions that they had, the race was still pretty good. I was thoroughly enjoying the race. Was sad about Carson not being able to finish and having that issue there at the end. I don't remember if something broke in his car, if he just blew a tire or whatever. Listen, the other thing too I want to mention about this broadcast, can we stop with this driver-only broadcast stuff? Like, the guys that they pick for the driver-only broadcast are not great. They are quite boring, to be honest. Having Kevin Harvick be the lead commentator for any broadcast is a bad idea. And whoever continuously keeps coming up with these ideas, you need to, if you want to keep doing these driver-only broadcasts for like the truck series or whatever, you've got to pick better talent. You've got to pick better talent. It's so choppy between going from the race to commercials, again, because it's just not something that Kevin is used to. He's not prepared for being in that position. So even if you wanted to say I'm not going to say Jamie Little. Don't put her in that spot because she's no better. But bring in, I just wish Adam Alexander could do both the CW and the Fox. Or bring in that guy from that does the ARCA races on Fox. Bring that guy in. I can't remember his name. He's the lead commentator for the ARCA races on Fox. Bring him in. Let him still have somebody who's not a driver or one of these guys be the lead commentator for the broadcast. Pick somebody else. Pick an actual commentator to still steer the ship a little bit. The other thing, too, I will say, a hell of a finish to this race. Corey Heim laid his fucking nuts on the dash, diving it into 3 and 4. I know he was on tires, but still a hell of a dive bomb, and he perfectly executed that. I did not expect that at all. Even with him having the fresh tires, I did not think he'd be able to not only... I thought he could get to him and maybe get by him. I did not think that he'd be able to get by him and then keep the momentum off the corner and just drive away from Ross coming off of 4. I did not expect that. It was the fact that he got it in there, perfectly slid up in front of Ross, and then kept his momentum going forward enough to get him to the line and not even give Ross a chance. It was a hell of a move. It's another reminder as to why it's like, guys, why is this guy a part-timer in all 3 series? Why does he not even have a full-time ride in any of the truck O'Reilly series or the Cup series? Like, this is ridiculous. This guy should be a full-time guy in either. I mean, if he doesn't have a spot in Cup, fine. If you can have the junior motorsports guys bounce around to 4 fucking different teams, I swear to God, they race for 4 different teams in the O'Reilly series. It's ridiculous. Raja's up and down on different cars. Quaffle's in different cars every week. Guys are in different numbers every week. Like, if you can do that, Heim should be able to find a way to have a full-time ride, at least in the O'Reilly series for a year. I mean, good God. It is ridiculous that this guy does not have a full-time ride anywhere and can't even compete for a championship because he doesn't have a full-time ride. It's ridiculous. But with that said, hell of a run from Corey Heim. I hope it should be. Like, 2311 needs to figure it out. If they got this guy under contract and nobody else can hire Corey, figure it out. Get Riley out of there and put Corey in. Put him in that 35 car, make that car competitive, and then you'd have an actual good 3-car team where you can have somebody who in there who can actually maybe run well, and if not win races right away in a few years. I mean, at least you'd have some hope, some potential with Corey Heim there. I just see nothing. I see nothing with Riley. Even with this somewhat okay run he had this last week at Darlington, I don't see it. I really don't. I will also say the 11 truck is very obviously the best truck out there, though, every single week. I think because Honeycutt's in that 11 truck, it's going to be a closer battle at the end of the season. But come chase time, I think it'll be hard-pressed to find somebody else in the field who will be ahead of that 11 truck by the time the chase starts. I just don't see anybody else being the lead guy going into the chase. Whatever happens on the chase we'll have to see, but I just don't see any other truck that races full time that's going to be able to compete with Caden at the end of the season. I know Ekes finished ahead of him here in the race in third, but I mean, Caden, if it wasn't one of the Cup guys up there, like, you know, Corey Heim, Ross Chastain, Hocevar, Bell at times, if it wasn't one of those guys up front, it was Honeycutt. So look out for that 11 truck for the rest of the season. As far as that, I don't have really too much on the truck series. The O'Reilly series, though, another really good race. You know, I'm going to get to it more here in the Cup series when I go to this next clip here in a moment. But people I think that are fans need to retrain their brain as to what is good racing. I really, really do think they have to retrain themselves into what good racing is. Because anybody who thought any race this weekend was boring, to me, was just not. Either they're not paying attention or they just they don't know what good racing is. Justin Allgaier gets another win here this weekend. I will give credit to Brandon Jones. Look, he's an O'Reilly Series guy for the rest of his career. He'll never go higher, and he probably will never go lower. If this is the year where he maybe is somewhat better, maybe we'll see. I know he has a long history of being good at Darlington. But even then, I still didn't expect him to be a top 5 car. I expect a lot of other guys to, you know, Sheldon Creed's been running well recently. I'll be honest, I expected a lot better from Austin Hill than what we got. He's not ran well the last couple weeks compared to what I thought. And even like a Jesse Love. Jesse Love, outside the top 10 for most of the race, was not very good compared to, again, what you kind of expect from a guy who's, I mean, RCR, I mean, I know that they're the powerhouse in the speedway or the super speedway department, and that's why people think that they're so high, but I still expected more out of him at a track like Darlington. I will give also credit, as I pointed out, to Jones. I talked about Retzlaff last week. The guy was top 10, top 5 for the entire race. Remember, this is Viking Motorsports. This is not Junior Motorsports. This isn't RCR. This isn't Joe Gibbs. This is Viking Motorsports. This is the same crew of guys who I think last year, or if not the year before, had Matt DiBenedetto in that car, and I fully expected Matty D to be at least running in contention for the playoffs, and he was nowhere close. Nowhere close. Retzlaff has stepped in this car this year so far and has ran very well. He is, the more he runs well like this, especially in this equipment, the more he's going to cement himself a spot every year, no matter what happens with Viking Motorsports. He's going to cement himself more of a spot in the O'Reilly Series. So shout out to Parker and shout out to Anthony. He also had himself a top 12 finish as well in that Viking Motorsports car. So Walich 17th. As far as I know, he didn't have any issues, just didn't have the speed. And that is a major concern, that being a Joe Gibbs car. You know, I know he's still young. He'll probably still make the chase. He'll be fine. Might even win a race this year, depending upon, you know, how things go. I'm saying maybe. I don't think he will, but maybe he will. But did not have the speed where I would expect a Joe Gibbs car to be. They were 17th. Raja was 23rd. That's really going to hurt him in the points. Again, he's in a Jordan Anderson car in the 32, because for some reason we can't just have one fucking Junior Motorsports car consistently with the same guy. We have to constantly move guys around all over the place. Carson was back in the 1 this week. God knows he'll be in some other fucking 91 car, the 32 car some other week. Raja was in the 32 this week. He was in there last week. For some reason, he can't just stay in the 88. I don't understand what the weird rotation is there with Junior Motorsports. I really don't. And I have to give a shout out to also, before we move on from the O'Reilly series, I have to give a shout out to Corey Day. You know, I've ragged on him the last couple weeks as far as not being very clean, not running very well, causing problems. And maybe that talk that he had with Rick Hendrick kind of woke something up in him. Maybe it did. Maybe it really kind of opened him up and said, hey, you know, clean it up or we'll find somebody else. And if it did, great, you know, then that'll be perfect for him. And maybe it'll right the ship and have him running a little bit better here the rest of the year. But on to the Cup Series. I want to play this clip that I saw earlier today. It needs to be played. This is Jordan Bianchi talking about the Cup Series race at Darlington. I didn't hear the whole thing, but I heard enough to go, yeah, this needs to be played on the podcast. So take it away, Jordan.
It was more of a pure race where the best car, best team won the race, and it had an old school feel to it. But it's also fair to say that maybe also at times wasn't the most entertaining. There wasn't as many lead changes as I think a lot of people thought what we would see. You know, outside of restarts and pit cycles in stage 1 and 2, I'd have to go back and look. I think you only had one. This is hard for me to say because I'm not a driver. From the outside, at times it didn't look like the drivers were out of control heading around all that much. It didn't look much different than we have seen in past years at Darlington, where it's hard to drive Darlington. I think if you would have taken away all of the context going into this race, with everybody saying everything they had been, and just had this race happen, I think people's opinion of this would be much different and more in line with yours, and probably very much enthused by this. I just think that the hype machine that was put into this it was almost to a level it was never going to match.
Here's the thing. There wasn't enough like out of control chaos enough for him, I guess. Here's the thing he doesn't understand is, number one, you're a reporter. You're a pit road reporter. You can actually go down and actually have conversations with the drivers after the race, before the race, whenever. You have the opportunity to go have conversations with these people. If you would have just went down and talked to Ryan, or even if you didn't even have to talk to Ryan, you just hear what he said after the race, you would have known, hey, yeah, the race was the race was a lot better driver wise as far as being out of control. Ryan said it himself in his post race interview where he said, hey, this is the first time I've ever had to actually sit and I chose to let people by knowing that I'd catch them in X amount of laps, because tires actually mattered, handling actually mattered. There was a lot less downforce. There was way more horsepower. It's not so easy to tell because guys aren't wrecking every 5 to 10 laps, and there aren't cautions every lap. They're not wrecking loose. They're not wrecking out of control, but it is harder to drive. If you actually watch the fucking race, you saw guys were crazy out of control off of 2, crazy out of control off of 4. Guys were getting crazy loose when they were around other people. They weren't wrecking, like I said, they weren't wrecking every lap, but they're good drivers. So even if they are out of control, they are going to save the car and they'll be okay. This idea that because there weren't 10, 15 cautions because of all the hype of, it's going to be really hard to drive this car. It's going to be hard to get around even a lap. Just because they weren't wrecking every 10, 15 laps and we didn't have 15 cautions doesn't mean that the race was bad. Doesn't mean the race was boring and that it didn't live up to the hype. It absolutely lived up to the hype, in my opinion. And I hope that this is it's as everybody says, it's a step in the right direction. It is definitely a step in the right direction. And I hope that if not this year, next year, this rules package is just applied to every track. It's applied to the 1.5 miles. It's applied to the short tracks. It's applied to the road courses. It's applied to everything. I really do. Because that type of racing is what is entertaining to people. Just because you see passing on your screen does not mean that that's actual good racing. Because you can make a pass on somebody, and then the minute you make a pass on somebody, you don't get a good enough run off the corner or whatever. They do, and they pass you right back. Well, just because there were technically 2 passes there doesn't mean that, there's really passing. There was no real actual progress made there by the driver making the first initial pass. It's just exchanging positions back and forth just to stay in the same spot. And we see that too often. And then, people who aren't well-versed in the sport or actually know what good racing is. I know I sound like I'm gatekeeping here, but like these people who are actually talking heads who are supposed to know, they don't even know. Jordan Bianchi is somebody who's listened to by NASCAR fans, and we're supposed to sit there and take this guy's word for it as far as what's good racing, bad racing, and he doesn't even know. So it's shit like this where it makes me shake my head and I go, guys, are you watching the race? I'm sorry that somebody showed up in Tyler Reddick, who has dominated the first month and a half of the season, that he showed up, and even with all of the issues, the battery issues that he had and all that other stuff, I'm sorry that, he still ended up winning, and it was very obvious. Even with how far back he got, it was very obvious he was the best car. I'm sorry, that just happens. It doesn't matter if the rules package is a 550 or 750 or whatever. Some people are just going to show up with the best car no matter what. They hit the setup right, whatever, and they're going to dominate. That happens. I mean, you're not going to get it to where it's so all over the place where you get 50 different lead changes and 10 different leaders and whatever. Sometimes it's not like that. The Darlington race in the Cup Series was very good, regardless of what Jordan Bianchi wants to say as far as, it didn't really live up to the hype. Yeah, it did. It did live up to the hype. Let it go. This was a good race. I had a lot of fun. I hope that the sport takes this and says, yes, we are going to continuously use this in other tracks. A lot more 1.5 miles. Just do it, I'd say, like I said, for every track that's on the schedule. Use this type of rules package. Keep the 750 across the board, not just short tracks and not just Darlington, but for all of them. Be a lot better racing. Like I said, Tyler Reddick was the very obvious best guy out there. Keselowski was it felt like Keselowski was just holding serve until Reddick got to him and finally made up all that ground. And even it sounded like Keselowski knew that too in his post-race interview where he talked about, I felt like second place was the best we were going to finish in that thing. Couple of small incidents, the Buescher thing with Reddick, again, kind of small, minute. Buescher admitted that was kind of on them. I also do kind of agree with the broadcast. I don't know why the secrecy there. I don't really think that they planned on really following him down pit road or anything. I don't think it was going to be too secretive if he just snuck down pit road. It was going to be pretty obvious. I don't know what that was about, but sorry, I had to cough there and I didn't get to my mute button. I'm running out of steam here. Logano completely missed. And even though Bubba finished behind Logano, Bubba was a top 5, top 10 car for most of the race. So sad to see him finish there. Larson, same thing. He was a top 10, top 5 car. He had issues there at the end. I'm not sure what happened to him. If something broke in the car or what, but something late in the race just fell apart for him. There was a lot of chaos there at the end of the race, which was which is just I thought there was going to be a caution there at the end with all of the problems that guys were having. Briscoe was getting on the wall. It seemed like he broke something in his car. He was just limping at the end. The main thing, though, as far as Logano goes, I'm not sure if it's more so they missed or he just wasn't getting it or what, because his teammates seemed fine. Blaney finished third. He had decent long-run speed. Austin Cindric was top 10 the whole race, which is something I did not expect to see Austin Cindric top 10, finishing fifth in the race. I did not expect that. And Logano was the very obvious outlier, so he's got to pick something up here. Expected Hamlin to be a lot better, considering his recent or past success at Darlington, but was not really the best car the whole race. We're just kind of holding serve again. Hocevar, hell of a run there at the end, pitting later. Had those fresh tires, got a bunch of spots there at the end, ended up getting to fourth from starting shotgun on the field. And some other small things. My underdog pick last week was Eric Jones. He did get himself a top 10 this week. Was kind of hoping to be a top 5, to be quite honest. I had him in my fantasy lineup, but still a pretty good run for the 2311. The Legacy Motor Club car. It was the only other thing I'll say, it was very cool to see all 3 of the Greg Biffle throwback schemes, 1, 2, 3, for a good portion of the race. I thought that was very cool to see the 6, the 17, and the 60 all up front. I was cheering for Keselowski to win, even though I knew Reddick had the best car. I wanted to see Keselowski break that long winless streak he had from a couple years ago, but it did not happen. So Reddick wins his 4th race of the season. They have 2311, as it was pointed out on the broadcast, has now won 4 of the 6 races of the year, and all by Tyler Reddick. So I wonder how Bubba Wallace is feeling. Let's finish this up. I'm about to lose my mind here with my voice going crazy, and I'm trying to hold back coughs. Top 10. Last week's top 10 after Vegas. Number 1 was Tyler Reddick. Number 2 was Bubba Wallace. Number 3 was Chase Elliott. Number 4 was Christopher Bell. Number 5 was Ryan Blaney. 6 was Ty Gibbs. 7 was Chase Briscoe. 8 was Denny Hamlin. 9 was Kyle Larson. And 10 was William Byron. Not too many changes as far as new names you'll see in the top 10 this week, but remember, it is not a standings. It is a power rankings, so it is not based off of points or anything like that. But number 10, I have Kyle Larson. Still had himself a good run this past weekend at Darlington, besides the late race issues that he had. Still had himself a solid top 10, top 5 run going before whatever the hell broke with his car broke. So I don't think he should be punished too much. He's still 10th. Number 9, I had to put Brad Keselowski in the mix. He's just been kind of okay for most of the season up until now. Had himself a hell of a run. And like I said, led 142 laps, most out of everybody. And was obviously the second best car all race long, right behind Reddick. So kudos to Brad. Had himself a hell of a Darlington race. He gets to be number 9 on the list. Number 8, I don't want to drop Bell off too bad. He was non-existent at Darlington, though. Boy, was he non-existent. Top 20 for most of it. Kind of feathered around 20th, honestly, for most of the race. 20th to 15th. I expect a lot better out of Bell. But I think he'll pick it up next week here at Martinsville. Number 7, Denny Hamlin. Another one who I expected a lot better from Darlington with his past success there. Has won there a lot over the last how many years. Just did not seemingly have the speed at all. Maybe he should be less focused on fishing and more focused on racing if he wants to pass Cale Yarborough there. Number 6, Chase Elliott. Another one who I expected a lot better from at Darlington, but did not get it. But I don't want to drop him too far off. He was 3rd last week. He is 6th this week. Also, the Chevys as a whole are off. More specifically, Hendrick. This week at Martinsville, we expect him to kind of turn it around. We'll see, though. Like I said, not sure as far as where this loss of speed has came from. I don't know if it really is just the change in the nose is really that big of a factor. I don't really see that major of a difference, but again, I guess it's enough a difference to really have him off on speed right now. But we'll see if they clean it up here going into this next week at Martinsville. So Chase Elliott, number 6. Number 5, Chase Briscoe. Another time. Late race issues for Chase is like a normal issue for Briscoe now at this point, where it's just like a good car, fast, has the speed to competing. He was leading laps. Like he has the speed to compete for wins and compete for top fives every week. And then another issue here, late race issue with something breaking or getting in the wall or whatever. So really not great for that, but he still gets to be number 5 this week. Number 4 is Bubba Wallace. I know he had the top 5, top 10 speed, but he had gotten in that wreck there with Hamlin and Jones, which I did not mention. But that ended up pretty much ending his race. He went multiple laps down. Bubba has been just kind of, he's continuously been in that top 10, top 5 spot, but these last couple weeks or so, it's kind of fallen off just a little bit. And with the problems here at Darlington, I can't not punish him for that. So he drops to 4 of the power rankings. So the first time we'll ever see a new number 2 in the power rankings this week, but you won't see a new number 1. I'll just spoil that. Number 3 is Ty Gibbs. He has ran extremely well for the last how many weeks? Very consistent. He had himself another top 6, finished 6th. I was about to say top 10, but he finished 6th. Was up front again, all race long, was talked about a lot. These last few weeks, he has really ran well, and it cannot go without being rewarded for that. I don't think, again, it's a coincidence that all of a sudden these really good runs from him have came right after the Chris Gabehart JGR stuff that popped off. But hey, good for him. Good for Ty. He's very quickly moved up the power rankings. He's now 3. Number 2 is Ryan Blaney, another one who has surprised me with how well he's seemingly ran. He also deserves to be rewarded with number 2 here because of the fact that a lot of the issues that he's had, and really the only real reason why he's been not more competitive with trying to get some more wins here, is his team these last couple weeks have just let him down. Pit road has been a constant issue for him. 2 loose wheels last week, another one this week. Like it's as Blaney said on his radio there, it needs to be cleaned up. Like it's getting ridiculous. So hopefully they can clean that up over the next couple weeks, and we'll see how he does in Martinsville. But he's number 2 right now, and number 1 doesn't really need to be explained. Tyler Reddick, 4 wins through the first 6 weeks of the season, has a 90-some point lead on second place right now. When Denny Hamlin said that thing a couple weeks ago, it was like, it's basically a lock that he's going to be top 3 in the point standings at the end of the season. It's not too far-fetched now. I know we still got 20 races to go, but I don't think this 45 is going to lose all that much speed. I don't think they're going to lose all that many points over the next 20 weeks. So we'll see how it goes. It'll probably take a catastrophic run from that 45, which I don't see happening because they have just had speed every single week. And with Chevys being behind and Ford's kind of somewhat still feeling secondary to the Toyotas, it is not out of the realm of possibility for Reddick to rack up a few more wins over these next few weeks. Okay, 5 to watch, and then we'll get out of here so I can go cough my lungs out. The main 4 guys I would keep an eye on this week heading into Martinsville before our off week after that. Danny Hamlin is one I would keep an eye on. Had himself a rough run at Darlington, but I do expect him to rebound this week at Martinsville. Like I said, Chevys are behind. I have to put my money in the bank on Toyotas. And even though, like I said, the rough run at Darlington happened and I expected more, Hamlin's had good runs at Martinsville in the past. Expect him to qualify well, and that's really most of the battle when it comes to racing at Martinsville and the short tracks in general. Number 2, Chase Briscoe. I expect that he's going to clean up these issues at some point. He's had good runs at Martinsville in the past. He's a decent little short track racer. I also think, like I said, the Chevys have been behind. Ford still feels secondary to Toyotas, and I have faith that Briscoe and that team can clean up some of these issues, and that once they clean up those issues, that'll be the thing that is really holding them back from actually trying to get a win here this season. Number 3, I have Chase Elliott. Look, even with Chevys being behind, Elliott has had good runs at Martinsville in the past. Larson is somebody who I would also kind of like a honorable mention, keep an eye on. But I think that Elliott, with his consistency, his past success at Martinsville, I think that Elliott is somebody to keep an eye on going into this week. And then obviously, number 4, Blaney. I think the Fords are still decently good at short tracks. Blaney has had very good runs at Martinsville in the past. I expect him to be competing for the win as well. And my one underdog, I have to give it to Ryan Preece. Good short track racer. RFK ran very well for most of it. As we saw, the 6 car led the 140 some laps at Darlington. Chevys are behind. This is going to be the 4th time I've said it. And Preece is good at short tracks. So I expect that 60 car to, if not competing for the win, he is my underdog pick to be a top 5 guy, leading some laps, up there competitive. So with that said, this is the shortest episode by a country mile. I have to get going. I'm trying so hard not to cough. I appreciate everybody listening. I hope you all enjoy Martinsville for what you can. It'll be probably not the most entertaining race to watch, but hopefully it'll be better than these last couple of years with the different package. I will be back again same time next week, 6 a.m. on Tuesdays, Central Time, so it'll be 7 a.m. Eastern. And I cannot wait for the next one. So thanks again for y'all for listening. I'm going to go try to recover for next week, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.